Hello, welcome to episode 5 of the Life Hub Coaching podcast. My guest has just been Gerard Doherty. We had an absolutely fantastic conversation about healing the trauma of the Troubles, what the Troubles were for Michael growing up in the mid to late 80s, and what the Troubles mean for the people of the North of Ireland. Michael was so candid. He was so honest in talking about his own story, and I'm really excited to bring you this episode. Enjoy the conversation. Michael, thanks so much for being with me today.
An absolute pleasure, Adam. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Now, this isn't the first conversation we've had. Unfortunately, just before Christmas, we recorded an absolutely amazing conversation, and unfortunately, my pea brain didn't allow me to get all the settings right, and I missed some audio, unfortunately. But very gracious, very kind. You picked up the phone to me last week and you said, Adam, let's do this. So here we are.
Absolutely. And as I said to you last week, timing's everything and things happen for a reason, Adam. And the way I would look at it is that hopefully today's conversation is coming at the right time for someone or some peoples out there who maybe would have missed it if we had got it out there around Christmas time with so much else happening. So it's a conversation that needs to be had, in my opinion, and hopefully one that strikes a chord with people and helps instill some form of growth. So thank you for taking the time to share it once again with me, and no better man to do so.
Let's begin with the Troubles. So you live in the north of Ireland, and the Troubles are a period of time for a lot of young people and young adults today is now part of history, and so their connection to it isn't as strong as it would be for people that were living in the north of Ireland during the Troubles. So maybe could you start by just explaining to that audience what the Troubles are and what it means to the people in the north of Ireland?
Well, suppose at the minute you're looking at a more political sense of the Troubles. You're looking at people going into forms of democracy there and having conversations as opposed to the gunfights and a war zone to put their political beliefs across. Before now, and I'd say on both sides of the divide, people felt that the only way to either protect themselves or get their point across or to be heard was to pick up a gun, to arm themselves. We've seen what's happened in Russia and Ukraine. We're seeing currently in Israel and Palestine that both sides will have their own opinions that they'll be strongly protecting, believing in, and the North was no different. I myself come from a Republican family, Republican political beliefs. Thankfully, we're now at a time where I suppose my political opinions and those of a lot of people in the community are being shared and being debated, as opposed to, as I say, put across in terms of violence and through force. But you could talk to someone else from a family 5 mile down the road, closer, probably 2 mile down the road, and they'll have a completely different narrative on the situation 30 years ago than I would have. To me, the Troubles were just a way of life, that a war zone was a way of life, and this isn't trying to dramatise what was happening. And I was lucky enough to not be in the height of the Troubles, to be born in the late 80s there, when things were actually calming slightly. Yes, there were spikes, but had I been born in the late 70s or early 80s, I would be sharing different stories, different forms of trauma, to be honest. But to me, growing up, your street was patrolled by soldiers. That was just par for courses, that you would have armed personnel walking around with guns under their arm, hearing sounds of gunshots, hearing the sounds of explosions. As a child, this was just the norm. Again, there's just a real sense of tenseness around the place constantly, a real anger, a feeling of vulnerability, as in you were unsafe, that there were certain places you couldn't go, that you had to be very careful when, even within your own community at times, depending on what time of the day it was, what sort of date it was. And this was just it. I think you were oblivious to it at the time because it was just the way life was. You're hearing stories and having conversations then about major events and some very significant events throughout the Troubles too. But this was just the norm. This was just how it was. As I say, in my own community there was just a sense of complete and utter discrimination. One where jobs were assigned based on your surname, even in terms of voting, that there were several forms of gerrymandering in place where, depending on your postcode, things could be tailored in a way that you mightn't have the democratic power of your voice there. So there was a lot of hurt, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration there, that we lived in a society where didn't feel it, your voice counted, and things got to a stage where I think people felt they were backed in a corner so much to an extent that the only way to make your voice heard was to raise up. And for me now, thankfully, we're in much more peaceful times, but we're seeing the spill of what has happened. Just like the pandemic there, I think that people are very much, from what I'm seeing anyway, that COVID's over, so we just move on. We don't go there again. We just move on to the future.
Yeah.
You look at the legacy bill currently too, and it's very much the same. There's so much hurt there, and it's a case of, no, we're not going to look back anymore. We're just going to move forward. And to me, high on earth, when that pain's there, that trauma's there, can we literally, the only analogy I could give, it's sticking a plaster over an absolute huge wound there and saying that, yeah, look, that wound's in the past, that's happened already, let's stick a plaster on it, and we're just not going to look there, we're just not going to feel that anymore, we're just going to move on and just get on with things. And I think, as you and I know, trauma is the word for wound. Plasters, depending on the size of a wound, plaster isn't always the best course of action there. And to me, it's about looking more at stitches to heal those wounds. And in order to stitch, you need to clean that wound properly, which is going to sting, and it's going to take a bit of time. And we want to avoid that sting, we want to avoid that pain at times. So it can be hard to go there, especially when we've been told not to address that wound, or not to go there, not to feel any pain when we're pressing down on it for so many years and over decades and generations. So I think it's only now that we're actually getting to the stage where people are becoming a bit more comfortable about opening up, about talking a bit more. But there's still a huge stigma there, especially especially in my own area there, where I can speak of firsthand in West Belfast and in neighbouring areas in Belfast there, and a farm and all.
Wow, there's so much to unpack in what you just said. Like I as you were talking, my thoughts were just imagining myself as a 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old just trying to walk to school, and seeing war around you, because you describe it as a war zone. It was a war zone, and I'm not sure that I can imagine that and what that's like. You've done an amazing job of painting a picture there. And then you talk about the open wounds, and of course a sticking plaster isn't going to heal a wound, which might have been what sounds like has been the response, is to almost ignore it. But if I break my ankle and pretend I haven't broken my ankle and I try and go about my business, I'm not. It's going to hurt. It's not. It's not going to help me. And I suppose to carry on the analogy, something that came up for me was, yeah, wounds can heal on their own, but doesn't mean they're going to heal properly. Doesn't mean they're still going to trouble you and give you grief in the future. So tell me a little bit more about the natural response people in your community and the communities of the north of Ireland have had since the Troubles. What is it for you, a typical response for someone?
Well, I think during that time it was there's no space for emotion.
Okay.
Certain emotions were acceptable. Other emotions were bypassed and cast aside. It was okay, feeling frustration, feeling angry. That's acceptable. That's okay. That's how we should feel at this time. But showing any form of vulnerability, talking about feelings, there was no room for weakness. I mean, as I say, if you want to talk about a war zone, there's no room for weakness. In war. Now, I'm not going to say that the street was a battlefield, but making that comparison, if someone feels that they're in and around that environment, there's no room to feel. That would be the last conversation someone would be wanting to have with you.
Okay.
It would be basically the fight or flight mode, and it was very much it's fight or flight, and it's fight. Park your emotions here. There's bigger things at hand here. So all those emotions being repressed, the more they're repressed, as you know, they have to show their head in some form or another. I'm reading a book at the moment. I'd be a great fan of Gabor Mate and his work. And it's all about the hidden cost of stress. And the title of the book is When the Body Says No.
Sure, yes.
And
yeah.
To me, we're seeing a lot of physiological and mental byproducts and consequences due to a lot of repressed emotions and feelings over a number of decades there, without a doubt.
Okay. And that must span generations.
Absolutely.
So I suppose for different generations, a lack of emotion rearing its head's going to look differently. So I know that you do a huge amount of work in your local communities to help people to start to process some of this trauma. So maybe you could go a little bit into some of the work you're doing and some of the trauma that you're seeing and some of the healing that's starting to happen.
I suppose at the minute, the word healing is huge.
Okay.
Right? Healing to me, it's growing. To use the analogy again of a wound, you need to explore a wound first. You go to a doctor. The doctor doesn't go straight away. Right, stick this on. Right, take this medication. You need to assess the wound. They need to see what the wound looks like. And when a doctor or a nurse are assessing your wound, that's painful. Be that using, I always remember in school, that sterilised wipe, trying to clean the grit out of your hand when you fell in the schoolyard. That's painful, but it's painful in a good way because it's clearing the hurt. It's clearing the dirt in order to allow that wound to heal properly. If you've suppressed feelings, if you've lived by the mindset of you just get on with it, you just keep your head down and get on with it, whatever's coming up, that's no good to you now. You just get on with it, brush it under the mat, just move on, get on with it. That's gonna catch up on you at some point. It may be at a time when you least expect it. I know through at the minute that I would hold groups. It was twice weekly. It's now on a weekly basis, and it's all about creating an environment where people can be authentic, where we will look at certain themes of personal development, and basically just share.
Mm-hmm.
Just
okay.
The only non-negotiable is that we're supportive, and that's it. It's a non-judgmental space where we support one another and we use our own experiences and our own stories to empower others around us. And that to me is the strongest form of healing. When you can use some of the most challenging experiences in your life to help support someone else who can resonate with your story, look at you as a form of hope. Here's some of the tools, strategies, ways in which you were supported or supported yourself during that. Then you're starting to own that. And I suppose in my own life, I've no doubt that it came down to, again, a generational side of my upbringing and the troubles. I have the most fantastic family in the world. I mean, incredible. My parents are my idols, always have been. You can forget your Messi, your Ronaldo, your top actors and singers. It always was the two of them. They're two people who are at the heart of the community, and everyone takes on their own roles. Everyone takes on their own roles. My role was one of a carer. I felt that I needed to fix everyone. If we can't talk about feelings and we, emotionally need to stay strong, to me it was okay. Well, how can I help as many people here as I can? How can I care for as many people here as I can? So I suppose I took on the role of a fixer, and school teacher for 15 years. During that time, it was, how can I fix these kids? And it's a totally wrong way to look at things. Kids aren't broken, people aren't broken, toys are, cars are. We're talking about human beings, but to me, I suppose, when I thought of the word fix, it was, how can I make this person better? How can I make them feel better? How can I help them learn better? How can I help them play better on a football field? But it got to the stage where that brought along a lot of pressure, where if I felt that I wasn't making that difference, and naturally I know now you can't control every situation, you can't control how someone else is growing, I would have taken that very personally, and I'd set myself, I suppose, such a high bar that my body said no and gave up on me for a way that brought about a pretty dark few months. And it's only now that I suppose I'm learning to accept that and give gratitude for having went through that spell in life. It was very much a wake up call for me.
Okay.
To look a wee bit deeper into, okay, where'd that come from? And if that could happen to me, it's definitely helping anyone else. And that's what's really kick-started these wellbeing classes,
Okay. Was there a moment for you? Was there like an aha moment when you realised that there's something not right here for me and this is a problem?
When I collapsed in school, I was teaching, and I literally collapsed and was in and out of consciousness, and really came round inside a CT scan hospital, and was brought into a side room with my wife and my 3-month-old son, sorry, at the time. This was about 8 years ago. Oh, it was 8 years ago, actually, right around June 2016. And was told, Michael Gerard, with good news, it's not a brain tumour. And that was the first time, I suppose, life was put into balance for me.
Okay.
Yeah, during the troubles, yeah, you're hearing news stories of death every day. You're maybe witnessing certain atrocities tragedies, seeing pain and that, but this was the first time, I suppose, when I felt my life was really in the balance, that someone was sort of taking that invincibility cloak off you that
Sure.
most of us have when
Yeah.
we're 29 years of age. So that shook me up massively, and I had to wait a few days on the consultant neurologist coming back with reports on what exactly was going on in my brain, basically, for that to happen. And yeah, your mind goes through every eventuality. And thankfully, I got the best possible diagnosis that there was nothing sinister there, but that this was brought about due to stress and exhaustion.
Yeah.
100%
Yeah.
stress and exhaustion. And
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe this, that your body, I mean, at the time, I would have been, was either captain or vice captain of the club football team, was coaching kids 2 nights a week. I was a primary school teacher for a number of years. Class, we're thriving. So in every area of life, wife, young son just born to me, I lived the perfect life and the perfect lifestyle. Ate well, didn't really drink. You write down the definition of what a healthy lifestyle looks like and invincibility looks like. I was the shining example of it. So that was scary, to think that
Mm.
me living that sort of life could end up in that situation and could basically push my body to that level. Brought about a scary few months then where I really questioned everything and questioned my very being.
Invincibility is such a strong word there, because, of course, it's impossible to be invincible. And people that feel invincible when they have a scare can really shake their core beliefs. Something that you mentioned there was the fixer, and it reminds me of a metaphor that one of our great mentors uses. That a fixer loves being in other people's houses and loves helping fix people's houses. Or you fix your radiator, we'll change your windows. I'll go to your house and I'll fix your house. But that's because my house is on fire and I don't want to deal with the fire at my house, so I'm here to fix your plumbing. And I just thought that's such a powerful metaphor, that the fixing and you wanting to fix the people around you, it speaks to me of someone that is really trying to do their absolute best, but at the same time maybe isn't even aware their own house is on fire. So I suppose the question then for me is, what was on fire in your house? What was it that you were trying to escape from?
I didn't realize that there was such a thing as having a relationship with yourself, and it actually took me until last January to come to that realization. 7 years after this episode.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah.
we talk about healing. To me, it's growing and learning. It's taken me 7 years really to have that, if you want to call it that, eureka moment where things started clicking. To me, my self-worth was only based on, my self-worth was totally another measured on the difference I made in others' lives. So if I wasn't, as I felt at that time, fixing others, then I wasn't worthy. Then I was doing something wrong. If kids in the class were struggling, I couldn't help them with that topic in school, then I was doing something wrong. I needed to work harder to make that child learn. Certain dominoes were to fall in my own family, I suppose, and community around the time and in the lead up to me having, I suppose, that moment where my body did give up. One of my siblings was diagnosed with leukemia. There was a close family breakup there were certain strains and other family relationships there. So there was a lot going on in school. We had an inspection, and for someone who, you know, there only is one level, it's either absolutely outstanding or it's nothing. There's no room for anything else. In the club team, we would help the lads get to an All-Ireland failure. So it would help those lads, I suppose, feel that they were as good as anyone across the country. So there was a lot of plates there being spun at the same time and needing to be spun at a good pace, at the top pace, and me feeling responsible for keeping them all up, being the only person who was instrumental in keeping them all going. And then I suppose you throw in the mix that I'm the firstborn son, and you add all those plates in, and then wanting to be obviously naturally the best father I could be, and the sleepless nights, and giving Irla all the attention and care that he deserved. And it just got to the point where I suppose the body could say no, and it's only now looking back where I can say, God, am I more than what I do for others? And the answer is 100% yes. I use again the analogy there with a lot of my groups of the pilot, and if the planes hit a bit of turbulence or run into some difficulty there, the oxygen has dropped, is the pilot going to put their own oxygen mask on first, or are they going to try and go around every passenger in the plane and put their oxygen mask on before they go back and try and steer the plane? So that wouldn't have resonated with me. I never felt that I mattered. I only felt that I was there to serve others, that my whole purpose in this earth was to serve others. Now I look at things from the other way around, that
okay,
I can best support others when I look after myself. If I'm not gonna look, when I couldn't support others, the 2 months that followed after that trip, if you want to call it, to the hospital, a place I wouldn't be familiar with at all, other than Gaelic football injuries. I went from a place of being the go-to person in every area of my life to feeling nothing, feeling that I was causing everyone pain, heartache, stress. I wasn't me, the person who I thought I was the opposite of that. I felt that I just caused everyone stress. I spent every day apologising. I suffered major anxiety due to, I suppose, what my mind had told me to believe, that I was going to die, that the doctors had missed something in terms of the brain tumour there. And with that brought about then a period of depression, because I was so anxious for so long that when that spikes so high for so long, it hasn't dropped to a certain low point, to the point where I got to the stage where I couldn't leave the house, and I couldn't be left alone. When eventually I was honest, and having tried everything from counselling to yoga to meditation, to antidepressants, you name it, that I got to the point where I shared with my mother that I thought that taking your own life would be the most selfish thing that anyone on this earth could do, but that this is an option, and it's an option that's getting stronger by the day. And yeah, I suppose to me that was my lowest point, because I was totally disconnected with me. Me was the fixer, me was the teacher, me was the coach, me was the father, the husband. And in all these roles, I was bringing nothing other than heartache, stress, worry. And I was usually the person fixing those things, or felt I was fixing, supporting people. So to me, there was no use in me being here. I was having the opposite effect. I was the one causing the pain as opposed to helping to heal it at that stage. And yeah, I'm thankful for that period now, Adam. I really am, and I know that's maybe selfish for me to say when considering what my parents went through, what my wife went through, my auntie, who was an absolute rock journey. But if I hadn't have went through that period of pain, of challenge, then I wouldn't have had the kickstart that I needed to look within and to start growing in a different direction. Looking more inward at, okay, why is this here? Why do you feel that you only count, that you're only measured on what you do for others, how you make others feel? If it hadn't been for me hitting those levels, you could have been looking at something completely different, medically. Because at that wake up call, if you want to call it that, when I was young, it sort of happened in a good time, a time where I could make lifestyle changes. I could change how I view myself, how much of myself I'm giving to others. So for me, the way I like to coin it is, it was the best worst thing that ever happened to me.
Yes.
And being able to share that sense of vulnerability, and
Yeah.
it took me 7 years, I suppose, to share that story, Adam. It took me to do a lot of soul searching and really to get to know me and be comfortable with what happened. I'm a great believer in things happening for a reason, as I said before. To be in a position where I know if I had seen someone else like me, who I looked up to or looked at as, geez, that fella's doing really, a teacher there,
Yeah.
son, wife, as I say, you're aiming off, brilliant community family, great friends. If I had me to resonate with back then, I maybe would have had hope a lot sooner. Where back then I didn't. I didn't think that could ever happen. Someone like me, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does, because, and I don't think people realize that something like suicide or suicide ideation can touch absolutely anyone in any walk of life. I'm not going to say at any point, but at an unexpected moment, shall we say, and that suicide doesn't necessarily mean what people think it means at the time. So you felt at your lowest point, you felt worthless to everyone. You felt you were bringing more pain. And I'm just going to make the jump and suggest that at that time in your mind, by ending your life, you would actually be relieving people of the pain you were bringing them. And that's why
my head was at.
Yeah. And that's why these conversations, I just feel, need to be had more and more and more and more, because that kind of thinking is maladaptive. It's not the way to think. Now, obviously, someone with those thoughts, you can't tell them that, but I suppose, just if I speak to my audience for a second, or the audience, if you feel like this is resonating with you, reach out to me, reach out to Michael, reach out to your mum, dad, your best friend, whoever. Just reach out to someone and just talk. And if you're listening and you feel like you're worried about anyone in your own life, never be afraid to ask the question, how are you doing? Are you feeling low? Or even, I'm worried about you because I care about you. Do you feel suicidal? And just even using the word with anyone that you have any concerns about can open a conversation. I'd rather someone be offended with me for 10 minutes as a friend because I've been so mistaken than me ignore any sign and that person end up taking their own life. And like Michael, the courage that you show in sharing your own story, the vulnerability that you have to go to, that takes, as you said, 7-8 years of work to get to that stage. So just start with a question, start with a conversation with a close friend, family member. That's just the overriding message I have listening to your story, because it sounds like that's what you were able to do, to be able to start looking at your own, the fire in your own house and starting to extinguish the fire. And you said right at the start of the conversation that healing the trauma of the troubles, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be able to share your own experience. So if people start sharing their experiences of the troubles in the same way that you share your experience of being at your lowest point, that's one way to start investigating the psychological trauma, the wounds that are there. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think when you can resonate with someone else and someone real, someone in your community, someone you know, someone who you have a certain viewpoint of, that can be your biggest sign of hope. And I suppose any well-being talk that I give, any well-being workshops that we'll have, it's picking key themes. Last night we had the theme of self-esteem, and in a room I think with 14 there last night, one person out of 14 and that was with a nudge could say, yeah, I'd say that I've pretty high self-esteem. But that sparks a conversation then.
Sure.
What is self-esteem? Why is that? What's going on? What's brought that about? And we'll literally look inward for a point. Life and every class I take, every group I'm working with, life has just got to a point where it's all about expectation. Expectation is everything. We did a winter wellbeing series there around Christmas time, which again, everyone hears Christmas, and the word that precedes Christmas most often is merry. Merry Christmas. It's Christmas. Yeah. Let's be merry.
Yeah.
Where we get real. We get real, and we look at grief around Christmas.
Okay.
We look at pressures around Christmas, and we these real conversations that on the ground are taking place, because every billboard you see, it paints the perfect picture. Sure. And if you're not living up to that, then somehow you feel inadequate. And even, the likes of presents at Christmas. Geez, James next door is getting that for the kids, so our kids need to have just as much. Everyone in their class have this, they need to just have that. And it's the same in life. Everyone on social media is going here. We need to be going there. It's already for social media. It's okay if that's the picture they're painting on social media. To me, people are afraid to share and get authentic because our lives have got so public. They've literally got so public. You don't know who's got a camera here, there, or whatever, who's Absolutely. Listening in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's also so busy that it's hard to get these real conversations, to create these huge connections. Again, talked to a lot of those in the group. It's like, I don't feel a need to see friends as much because I can see their whole life on social media.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see, and that's the first thing where, if we're on the phone, I'll see you went to the farm with kids, or was it good? Yeah. It's very surface level conversations. It's almost like small talk. It's talking so you can hear what I want to say. I'll listen to you, I'll say a few things about you just so I can give you my story and we'll move on. But there's no real depth to it, where I'm very humbled that there's a group of people every Wednesday in my own community centre where both my parents are based out of, and we just hold a space. They choose the themes. As I say, self-esteem was last night's theme. The group on a weekly and bi-week and fortnightly basis will choose the themes. We'll set out a monthly. At the minute we've got 3 months of a plan there, and this is what they want to talk about. There's some people who've attended for 3-4 months, and it took them up until the 5th month to start chatting a bit. It took them to listen to others share their stories till they got to a point where they were like, Jesus, maybe my situation is as bad as I thought. Maybe things aren't as bad in my life as I thought. You've others there and they've just clicked instantly with someone else. God, I thought I was the only one, who felt that way about my eating disorder. Someone else, again, maybe bringing up certain moments from the troubles and they're resonating with them. God, I lived in that street. God, I remember that taking place.
Yeah.
I felt like that too. So resonating with others to me is absolutely huge. I'm a massive believer in the three C's: communication, connection, and caring. And if you can get the right people, it may even be the right person to share those three C's with, that is one of the strongest tools you can have in your toolkit there. I mean, that's your Swiss Army knife there, where
Yeah.
you're putting out different strands for different occasions, and that's through the highs and lows. To have that person to connect with on that meaningful level, to communicate on a level where you feel what they're saying. You know, you're not just listening as a bouncing board, you're actually feeling and empathizing with what they say, because the lastly, because you care about them. You care about them. And you know what? That's reciprocated. That they care much about you. That they want to share those happy moments with you. That they're going to be there for you when the sense that you're in a low place or in a challenging place. Because the world's getting so busy. Because things are being shared more on social media than in person. Because what we're seeing across the board on social media, and that is a very filtered life.
Sure.
People
Yeah.
are becoming that bit more hesitant
Yeah.
to create those moments and those situations. So it's almost like, how do we get back there? You know, how can we use the benefits of the modern world, but take some of those core values of community, I mean, when I think of rural Ireland, even Ireland of the 40s, 50s, 60s, where, I mean, doors were just left open. You know, you just walked out in and out of each other's homes. You know, you hear of, Irish people with a shan scale, just reciting poems, storytelling. We were always great for this, that was a part of it. Hopefully still is rooted in there somewhere, of our culture of sharing stories, that sense of coming together, really listening. We need to get back there, like. We need to, in an urban and new age, bring back those moments.
Yeah. And it sounds like a huge part of the answer to healing trauma, particularly post, say, the Good Friday Agreement, that the three C's are going to be the most effective tools in the kit for people. That actually there's no magic wand, there's no quick fix. Actually, this is a process. And you just have to, day by day, try and hit and reach more and more and more people. And that they say time will heal, but you got to use the time effectively. Last year you started your business, so I know you left teaching after 15 years and you started your own business, MGD Coaching, and that's the mission, right? That's the mission of your business is to affect that change and get people to communicate. Where are you at now? How's your business going?
Look, it's going well. It's going well. Um, I swear by my slogan, my motto, if you want to call it that, my three cornerstones.
Yep.
And it very much paints a picture of the conversation we had today. Explore, believe, and thrive. There's no skipping. There's no skipping any stage there. That state of exploration can be the most challenging at times. But by God, when you explore enough to get to the point where you believe and change yourself, that's then when you begin to thrive. And I genuinely believe that from I've made that decision, that I am thriving in life. I'm looking much more at me. Those three C's that we spoke about. My connection with myself is completely different. How I communicate with myself is completely different. And I care much more for myself. And that's came about making a decision that was a scary one. As someone with a young family, three young kids, three lads, a mortgage, to go from full-time employment and a very secure job, a job that I loved, in a school that I absolutely adored, with kids from my own community who, again, I idolised every day. to back yourself, and that's what I call it, to back myself. And I'd say it's the first time where I can say at the highest sort of level and the highest stakes where I 100% back myself to go out on my own was so empowering, and I haven't looked back since at it. I mean, I say if you were to break down the number of personal development workshops that I've led since, you'd be talking close to 100 from last August. It wouldn't be far off it. In terms of client sessions, I've maybe 150 sessions done with different clients on a one-to-one basis. My word is belief, and I would be multifaceted there in that I care just as much about the personal coaching side as I do about the performance coaching side. The performance coaching, I would do an awful lot of work with different sporting teams, whereas the personal side would be more on the ground with clients and with the personal development workshops, but they go hand in hand.
Sure.
I've yet to meet a team there where when they're feeling better about themselves and showing those 3 C's off the pitch, that's not having a positive effect on what's happening on the pitch there too.
Yeah, no, you're so right. Yeah,
But
yeah, you're so right. That's something that I've said a lot. That the distinction between a professional life and a personal life is a facade. It doesn't exist. You cannot drop your life at the threshold of your workplace and pretend it doesn't exist for 9 hours of the day, 9 of the best hours of the day, and then expect to pick them up at 5 o'clock when you're exhausted and tired and all the rest of it. So no, that really resonates with me. Michael, I'm so aware that you're talking about your clients, that in a very short time you're going to be interacting and engaging with those clients. So I've got one more question, 2 more questions. The first one is, what is one thing that people need to be talking about that they aren't talking about?
Okay. Talking about the relationship with themselves. Talking about what's really going on within themselves, and not being afraid to be vulnerable to the right people. So look inward, sit with that uncomfortability, try and figure out why it's uncomfortable, and that's to me when the true healing can start taking place. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Brilliant. Awesome. And last question, which is, where can people find you?
Yeah, look, I suppose of the Instagram page, MGD Coaching, the Facebook page, the same MGD Coaching. My personal one's Michael Gerard Doherty. I've got a website, mgd-coaching.com, and all the services are broke down there. I've also been giving well-being talks there to many schools, many different organisations, and I can be contacted through the website or through any of the social media channels there too. But look, Adam, just from my own sake too, I'd just like to thank you for giving me this opportunity. The hour or 40 minutes, 45 minutes, it's absolutely flown in.
It has.
Any conversation with you always does. I'm sure we could speak for another few hours, to be honest. There's so much to get through.
I'm definitely going to have you back. There's absolutely no question of that. So we'll get you back in and catch up again, because you're right. We could talk for hours about this. But for now, I'll keep you no longer, Michael. It's been an absolute pleasure. The pleasure really has been all mine. I absolutely love these conversations, and thank you.
Thanks so much, Adam. And as I close every workshop with, the Irish word for believe is a word called Creid, and it's a word that anyone who's ever worked with me or will do so in future will know that I'm a massive believer in. So on that note, Creid, believe.
Creid. Michael, thank you.